Hi, my name's Mel Herbert and I've been asked to show you how I set about sowing my lily seeds. I should begin by saying that it's very much the method I use, and I'm not suggesting that it's the only correct one. Lots of very good growers have excellent success using different methods. Anyway, what I do is I use terracotta pots, mainly because I tend to be a little bit heavy-handed with the watering can, shall we say. I do use drainage over crocks in the bottom of the pot, and coarse gravel, or in this case washed pea gravel. I know that some growers prefer not to use drainage because of a phenomenon known as a perched water table. Anyway, here we go. This is what I do. The crocks go into the bottom of the pot with the concave surface pointing downwards so that they don't hold a pool of free water in the bottom of the pot. And they go in crisscross over each other, making a layer maybe 2 or 3 centimetres deep in the bottom of the pot. After that, in goes the gravel, just enough to fill most of the gaps between the crocks. This prevents the main compost from going down between the crocks. Okay, that's probably enough. Okay, next in goes the compost. The mix I use is made up of 2 parts ericaceous compost, commercial compost, 1 part washed coarse grit, and I do wash it myself because even the commercial so-called washed grit has quite a lot of fines in it, and then a quantity of perlite, probably about a half a measure. So in that goes. And it goes in the pot up to about within 2 centimetres of the top. Okay. Once that's in there, it just gets a gentle press down at the back of my hand. So, next we need to actually sow the seed. I'm making this video in September, and so the seed I'm going to sow is a North American Lilium pardalinum subspecies chastense. The seed is from the Lily Group Exchange, the last one, and when the seed arrives I write out the labels and so on ready so that it saves me time actually at sowing time. I use an old plate, I find that helps, and the seed goes on there, and the first thing I do is to check the seed over and remove any that's looking like it probably won't germinate. So in this lot of seed, actually the seed quality looks very good. There's one very dark seed, but other than that, they look pretty good. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 seeds. Normally I would only sow about 10 seeds per pot. They're 14 centimetre pots. But in this case I will sow all the seeds in there because some of them are very small and maybe they won't germinate. I tend to pick the largest seed first, I don't know why. and that one usually goes in the centre of the pot. You can see I've moved it around on the plate, makes it easy with them sliding on there, and it's actually placed vertically with the pointed end of the seed downwards. That's the end with the micropyle where the radical will actually emerge from. And then the others are spaced out at maybe a centimetre or a centimetre and a half. And I put them in a sort of grid arrangement. So, now we need to cover the seeds gently with a layer of compost, just about a centimetre or so. Spread it out gently, and then gently press down. Make sure the seeds are in good contact with the compost. And place the label. Okay, and now the seeds need to be watered, and I do that by immersion in a bowl of water up to about the rim of the pot. And wait for the water to soak through the compost. Once water appears on the surface of the compost, then the pot can be removed and drained, and it will be left for 2 or 3 days for the excess water to evaporate away. Then it will be placed inside a small freezer bag and sealed with a twist tie. This is a pot of Lilium japonicum seed which was sown earlier in the summer, just to show you what they look like once they're bagged up with the twist tie. And then the pots are stored on a shelf inside a shed. And they'll be checked regularly once spring comes for any seeds that are starting to germinate or emerge. So, sowing the lily seeds in pots is really very straightforward, very easy, and the way I've shown you works for me and is very successful for relatively small amounts of seed. If you want to sow larger amounts for some reason, maybe you would like to develop a large bed in your garden, you want to perhaps raise more plants to sell or to send to the Lily Group bulb auction, then using relatively small pots isn't all that practical. Handling lots and lots of separate pots becomes a bit of a nuisance. So recently I've been trying deep trays. Now I haven't found a source for proper deep trays, and ordinary seed trays are nowhere near deep enough for lilies. So the solution I've come up with is that I use washing up bowls. As you can see, I've drilled lots of holes in the bottom, and then basically I do exactly the same as with the individual pots. So a layer of crocks, a layer of coarse grit or pea gravel on top of that, then the compost, and I sow the seeds. Okay, so today I'm going to sow seed of Lilium armenum. It's seed that I collected fairly recently, so it's very fresh seed, and being a Caucasian, sown this time of year, if it's given a few weeks of warm weather before the winter sets in, and then a good cold spell, some will germinate next spring, and those that don't will probably germinate the following spring. So I'll empty the package onto the plate. There are about 70 or 80 seeds here, and being Caucasians, they're nice big seeds, so they're easy to sow, and that's about the right sort of quantity for this bowl. So I sow them in rows. Across the bowl I'll put about 5 rows, so roughly there are sort of 10 to 15 seeds per row. So I'll begin in the middle, as before, with the micropile end down, and I'll just space them out about the same sort of distance as in the pots. Well, there we are. All the seed is sown, and all that remains is to cover with a thin layer of compost, as with the pots, and put in the label. Just about a centimetre deep, as with the pots. Try not to disturb the seeds too much. Just level out gently. And a gentle press down. There we go. Pop in the label, and there we have it. So it's not really very practical to try and water by immersion, so this will be watered with a fine rose on watering can. Then, once it's been allowed to dry a little for a few days, it'll be placed inside a large plastic bag, transparent plastic bag, and placed in the shed along with the other things. Once the weather turns really cold, my plan is to put this in my new fridge, which I'm using for germination of those plants, those species which need particularly cold winter. I find that here in Wales the winters are not reliably cold, and with Caucasians, for example, I don't get as good germination as I did when I lived in Germany with reliably cold winters. So I'm hoping that my new fridge will do the trick, and that next year and the year after lots of seedlings will come up, and I'll have plenty for my own garden, and hopefully some surplus to put in the bulb auction. Well, just before I finish, I thought I would show you the kind of thing to expect if all goes well. So here is a pot of Lilium wardii from Lily Group seed, sown using exactly the same methods this spring, around about the end of February, beginning of March, and you can see they've done really well. And in the bowl here, we have Lilium rhodopeum in their second year. So if you look closely, you'll be able to see that some of the plants, such as this one, have several true leaves. They're the plants that germinated after the first winter. Whereas quite a lot have come up after the second winter, and these are the ones that have either just the odd true leaf or perhaps just cotyledons, even with the odd seed coat still on the end. And finally, just to show that these methods can be adapted for particular species, here is a bowl of Lilium mishovii from the Big Thicket area of Texas. Although it's related to Lilium superbum, it grows in drier locations, well-drained locations. So I actually sowed the seed into a different compost. This is a pumice-based compost recommended by a friend with pumice, perlite, fine composted bark, and just a little ericaceous compost. And these are 2-year-olds. As you can see, there aren't so many plants in the bowl. That's because the seed was not of particularly good quality and germination was quite low. Well, I hope this video has been of some use in promoting growing of lilies from seed. If you haven't tried before, then please have a go. It's not difficult and it's very rewarding.